Volunteers. It's been 50 years since the U.S. government decided they needed a volunteer army, military. And they set out the words. And why? When they had the draft, conscription, well, Vietnam War. Vietnam War? Oh, yes. And they used to draft people. I signed up for the draft. Even though I knew I could never get in, I signed up for the draft. I was 1Y. And because I volunteered to get into it out of high school, and I couldn't run. I have undeveloped lung. Yeah, this is okay, but this one is. Or is it this one's okay, but this one isn't? So I couldn't run very fast. You can't do boot camp. You get to boot camp. You're running all the time. You can never do it. But for the draft, and you know why there was a draft? Because Vietnam War. I knew a guy, Sal, who went over there in the very beginning. He got drafted, went over there, or did he volunteer? So he was a guard at the post on like Da Nang or something, big post. He was sitting there with his rifle and that thing, but they didn't give him any ammo. You can't shoot the VC. They're not bothering us. We don't bother them. He said he would challenge people coming in, but that didn't stop anybody from coming in. It's open doors. And he says, well, what happens if they attack me? Oh, you die. Sure didn't like that. But, yes, he was there. Then the war started happening. How did they do that? Well, the USDA building got blown up, and all those secretaries were out there, so you need more troops there protecting U.S. interests there. And then what did they do? They started going into the field. Wow, they got civil affairs. Oh, well, we gotta have civil affairs out there, and maybe we can drill them a well. We can educate them. And what happened? They got shot at. They got shot at almost immediately. They went out there because they want to be, we can do this, and we get vaccinations, and we do medical, we do health, and we do school. And they got shot at. So then they need some better people out there, and they got more people in there. It was a sucker war getting into. And you talk to people, I talked to people coming back from Vietnam and the Army, and they said, we're going to get drawn into a war. We should not fight. It's not our fight, really. It's a fight against that thing. There's a big difference between having officers training the locals, the Vietnamese army, and us having troops in there. And it was. The first time you sent in, you put in the military officers, they got a colonel above them. You put in a private, they need a sergeant. Because you can put your corporals in there. And then they need a sergeant above that. And then you need that thing. You have all this big office stuff. You might have had troops in the field, but they were supported by all these other people. That's what happened. I go, what happened? The Vietnam War gets going on. We're not supposed to be there. We shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be involved in local things. All through our history, we stomp in these places and we get our tail bloody. I'm not an anti-war party, but I will tell you one thing right now about that thing. Why the thing? Well, let me see. Campuses on that thing. Why? It was okay when you get the dummy of us going over there, who volunteer to go over there. But when you start drafting college students to go to war, that's something else. Now it becomes a threat to the college students. Before it was okay, the non-college students going over there and dying for their country. But not the little white guys sitting on a student campus, and that's what they were. The car burners, the demonstrations, the anti-war people. They're not anti-war, they just don't want to go to war. What? They're not anti-war as long as we are over there fighting and they're not over there fighting. It doesn't make any difference. When they get drafted to go over there fighting, that's something else. Right. It's like if I was drafted to join the local police department, you're now with us. Oh, by the way, you're going to be shot at, and you don't get a bulletproof vest. General Powell, when he was alive, had to go through that. But that's beside that. And that's your volunteer. And it still is a volunteer. You're still getting your 18-year-old to go in there service. And why do they want 18 years old? Because at 18 years old, you're not exactly the brightest thing on the planet. And they're counting on that. When I volunteered the second time for that, and I got like I volunteered for the Corps. If I figure I'm going to get into something, I might as well get into the Corps. The second time, I said, why don't you just let me sweep the floors or something? No, you have to run the 10-mile race. Well, I never, But he said, we want the 18-year-olds. That's what we want in our military thing, are the stupid 18-year-olds. Because you could basically brainwash them to go running up a hill, even they're, 18-year-old stupids. They're not the brightest thing on the planet. They haven't matured. And that's about your volunteer army. And it still is your volunteer army. And the thing is the volunteer army, we own you. I didn't, I had a little DI about that high. And I had to do some training at one of the local bases. And I had this little, and she said, I own you. Why are you? I need some discipline in my life. Good. But that's a whole another story. But volunteer is a very good thing in the military. And when you sign that contract, you sign a contract with the U.S. military. They own you. You get sworn in, you sign your little name on the dotted line. Sometimes there actually is words above the dotted line. What am I citing? Never mind, cite it! And they own you lock, stock, and barrel. And they can send you, well, if you go to West Point and do that as a volunteer, you better do the 4 years, sonny. They're going to try to get you out. They're going to scream at you. They're going to swear to you in 5-letter words. There used to be 4-letter words. Now it's a 5-letter word. And they're usually in Chinese or Russian, so you can't understand them. But they're still shooting. Yes, they still do that. And they learn Chinese, and unless you know Chinese, you don't know what they're saying, but they're really, by the tone of their voice, you're going to do there and sweat. And you ever have an instructor, oh, they're all Americans, yeah, but they swear in Chinese, and you don't understand what they're swearing in Chinese about. And they always swear in Chinese, they swear in Russian, too. I can swear in Spanish, and I still wouldn't understand them. But that's a volunteer for you, boy, in the military. And I say, why in West Point you got to watch yourself or other schools, military schools, because you signed the bottom line. I heard the thing about West Point is the very first run is before they swear you in, but you pick up this back and you run and you come back and you say, it's only going to get thing. Okay, now these are your thing. They give it to you and say, if you don't want to be in the service, tear that up. And some people tear it up. They're qualified for West Point, but they tear up their entrance. But then for the next 2 years, they have you. And then what I'm told is that thing is at West Point, In 2 years, they ask you again, do you want to be in service? Do you want to be here? The last 2 years of hell, next 2 years is not going to be. Our job is to force you out of this service because you're weak. But I'm 20 years old. What do you mean I'm weak? You're weak. We warn you right now. They warn you very simple as a volunteer right now. Listen. You walk in there, you walk out of here, you got 2 doors. Back to being a civilian or back for the next 2 years. If you decide to walk out when you go through that door, tomorrow morning you decide you don't want to be in here, too late. We give you that chance of going over there, or you go through that, volunteer that. If you decide, listen, if you decide, your DI is telling you, if you decide to go through that door and tomorrow morning you decide you're going to quit, we're going to find a combat zone for you. We're going to find a combat zone for you, just like all the other military schools. We will find you conditions that are going to make your next 2 years as hell. Maybe not as worse as West Point is going to be for you in the next 2 years, but okay, you got a choice. Go back to being a civilian, right, or go out that door there. And you can't quit. We still own you lock, stock, and barrel. And we're very simple. And your officers that in the military service took the right one. And they got their lieutenantship out of that. They got 4 years of education. So they had a lot of guts. Male or female. Okay? Male or female. It's still 4 years. And when you got their graduation, they went through hell to get that bar on their shoulders. I have a lot of respect for them. I have a lot of respect for every boot that goes through boot camp. Well, PFC, still got a lot of respect for people who do that. Oh, maybe that's lucky. Maybe my medical problems are lucky. Why? You didn't step on a landmine, did you? Stupid. But I still have a lot of things for people who volunteer, like being a cop. If you volunteer to be a cop in Chicago, they give you a bulletproof vest. Wear it at all times. Wear it on the job and off the job. You can get killed. You can get killed walking down the street if they find out you're a cop. They will kill you. They can kill you as a civilian, too. Well, hey, I don't have to go to Afghanistan. I could go to Chicago. But, that's the old saying about volunteers. We were stupid. Have you improved? No. Do you have a chance to go over there? Hey, I could go to the Ukraine. All I have to do is take my passport to go down to the Ukrainian Consulate General and saying, hey, I want to go over there. And they say, you've got to be kidding. They're going to eat you. But hey, that's volunteers for you.